The coins clinked against the worn convenience store counter as Olivia Mitchell's trembling fingers counted them. $2.74 in quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies. The last of her money until next week. Overhead, fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across her exhausted face. Olivia, looking a decade older than her 26 years, whispered, "I'm sorry about the coins?" To Betty, the kind cashier. The line behind her grew. "Don't you worry, honey. Money is money," Betty replied. Olivia clutched the specialty baby formula. Emma had been fussier, and the pediatrician suggested this expensive brand. It was a devastating blow to her budget. But Emma's health came first. Always. Life hadn't always been this hard. 3 years ago, Olivia had been climbing the corporate ladder at Westridge Innovations, a fast-growing tech company in Boston. She had just received a promotion to marketing manager when she met James at a company party. Handsome, charming, and seemingly kind, James swept her off her feet. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage within 6 months. Then came the gradual changes. James grew controlling, isolating her from friends and family. When she became pregnant, a welcome surprise, things deteriorated further. 2 months before Emma was born, she came home to find the apartment emptied of his belongings and a coldly written note. "I never wanted to be a father." "Is there a problem here?" A sharp voice from behind cut through her memories. Olivia turned, clutching the formula. The man was tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. His steel-gray eyes looked irritated as he checked his expensive watch. "No problem, sir," Betty said. "Just give us a minute." Olivia's face burned. "I'm sorry," she murmured, offering to step aside. Something in her voice made him pause, his gaze falling to her worn coat and simple wedding band. Betty finished counting the coins. "You're short $3.18, honey." Olivia's stomach dropped. She had counted wrong in her exhaustion. "Oh, Her voice faltered as she frantically searched her purse, knowing there was nothing more to find. She would have to put the specialty formula back and buy the cheaper brand that made Emma sick. The thought was a cold knot of despair in her chest. "I'll just add whatever else she needs to my purchase," the man behind her said suddenly. His voice, once sharp with impatience, had softened, a subtle shift that made Olivia turn in surprise. "No, please." "That's not necessary," she protested, her cheeks still flushed with shame, but a flicker of hope ignited within her. "It's $3. Daniel dismissed, waving a hand. "Consider it paid forward." Before Olivia could protest further, he handed a crisp $20 bill to Betty. "Keep the change." Relief, potent and overwhelming, washed over Olivia. "Thank you," she whispered, blinking back tears that threatened to spill. "I promise I'll pay you back." She clutched the can of formula, now undeniably hers. The man studied Olivia's face for a moment, his steel-gray eyes searching. "Do I know you from somewhere?" he asked, a hint of curiosity replacing his earlier irritation. Olivia shook her head, gathering the bagged formula into her worn purse. "I don't think so," she murmured, desperate to escape the fluorescent glare and the weight of his gaze. As she hurried toward the exit, her phone buzzed insistently. It was Mrs. Abernathy, the kind, silver-haired woman downstairs who watched Emma during Olivia's evening shifts at the diner. A knot of dread tightened in Olivia's stomach. Mrs. Abernathy never called unless it was an emergency. "Olivia, you need to come home now. Emma's burning up with fever." The world seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. "I'm coming right now," she managed to gasp before ending the call, her heart hammering against her ribs. She rushed outside into the biting November air, her mind a frantic blur. "Is everything all right?" The man from the store had followed her outside. Up close, there was something vaguely familiar about him, a face she might have seen in a magazine or on a corporate website. But panic blurred the details. "My baby's sick," Olivia choked out, already walking, calculating the 15 blocks home. The bus wouldn't come for 20 minutes, and a taxi was a luxury she couldn't afford. "I need to get home, but I live 15 blocks away." "I have a car. I can drive you." Olivia hesitated. Every fiber of her being screamed against getting into a stranger's car, but Emma's tiny burning body was a more potent fear. "Why would you help me?" The man's expression softened further, a genuine concern replacing his earlier aloofness. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Daniel Westridge." The name hit Olivia like a physical blow, a cold shock of recognition. Daniel Westridge, CEO of Westridge Innovations, the company where she had once climbed the corporate ladder. No wonder he had looked familiar. His picture had been all over the company website and in every annual report. "Olivia Mitchell," she replied automatically, shaking his outstretched hand, her mind reeling. A flash of recognition crossed his face, his steel-gray eyes narrowing slightly. "Mitchell? Wait, Olivia Mitchell from marketing. You disappeared almost 2 years ago, gave your 2 weeks, notice by email, and never even came back to clean out your desk." Olivia swallowed hard, her embarrassment warring with her escalating fear for Emma. "Yes, that was me. I'm sorry about that, but I really need to go now." Daniel's expression became unreadable, a mask of controlled curiosity. He guided her to a sleek black car parked nearby, a vehicle that radiated wealth and power. "Get in. You can explain on the way." The interior was warm, smelling faintly of expensive leather and subtle cologne. As Daniel pulled away from the curb, Olivia gave him directions, her voice shaky, her thoughts a chaotic jumble. Of all the people in Boston, why did it have to be her former boss? "You were one of our most promising managers," Daniel said quietly as he drove, his gaze fixed on the road. "Everyone was shocked when you left. Lisa in HR tried calling you multiple times." Olivia stared out the window, the city lights blurring. "It's complicated. We have at least 10 minutes. Try me." And so she did. In halting, painful sentences, she recounted the story of James. The gradual control, the crushing isolation, the shock of pregnancy, and finally, his cold, complete abandonment. With each word, Daniel's knuckles grew whiter on the steering wheel, his silence a heavy, absorbed presence. Daniel pulled up in front of Olivia's run-down apartment building, the sleek black car looking starkly out of place. Before Olivia could thank him and rush out, he turned to her, his gaze intense. "Why didn't you ever tell me what was happening to you?" he asked, his voice strangely emotional, a depth to it that stopped her cold. But before she could process the question, her phone rang again, a jarring sound in the quiet car. It was Mrs. Abernathy. Olivia's heart lurched. "Emma's burning up with fever, Olivia. You need to come home now." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. "I have to go," she managed, grabbing the formula and rushing from the car. "Thank you for the ride." As she ran toward the building entrance, she didn't see Daniel pull out his phone, or hear him say, "Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day. Something more important has come up." Olivia burst through the door of her small apartment, breathless from taking the stairs 2 at a time. Mrs. Abernathy, a silver-haired woman in her 60s, was pacing the worn carpet with Emma bundled tightly in a blanket. "Thank goodness you're here," Mrs. Abernathy exclaimed, immediately transferring the whimpering baby into Olivia's arms. "Her fever's gotten worse in the last half hour." Emma's normally rosy cheeks were flushed an alarming red, her wispy blonde curls damp with sweat. Her tiny body felt like it was burning up. "How high is it?" Olivia asked, already moving toward the bathroom where she kept the children's medicine. 102.3 when I checked 5 minutes ago," Mrs. Abernathy replied, following close behind. "I tried the fever reducer you left, but she spit most of it out." Olivia's heart raced. This fever felt different, more intense, more frightening. "I think we need to go to the emergency room," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Mrs. Abernathy nodded, already reaching for her purse. "I'll call a cab." "Wait!" Olivia stopped her, remembering the man downstairs. Had he left? Would he still be willing to help? There might be someone who can drive us. As if on cue, a knock echoed at the door. Mrs. Abernathy opened it to reveal Daniel Westridge standing in the hallway, looking decidedly out of place among the peeling paint and flickering overhead light. "I thought you might need help," he said simply, his steel-gray eyes devoid of their earlier irritation. Relief washed over Olivia, a wave so profound it almost buckled her knees. "Emma's burning up," she managed. "We need to get her to Children's Hospital." Without hesitation, Daniel stepped forward. "My car's right outside." 10 minutes later, they were speeding through Boston traffic, Daniel driving with a focused intensity. Olivia sat in the back seat, Emma cradled against her chest, the baby's whimpers now weak and infrequent. Mrs. Abernathy had stayed behind, promising to prepare the apartment for their return. "She's never been this hot before," Olivia whispered, more to herself than to Daniel. She stroked Emma's cheek gently, trying to soothe her. "It's okay, sweetie. Mommy's here. We're getting help." Daniel's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "We're almost there." 5 more minutes. Olivia nodded gratefully, a knot of confusion forming in her stomach. Why was the CEO of Westridge Innovations going so far out of his way to help her? And what had he meant by that question? "Why didn't you ever tell me?" At the hospital, Daniel's presence seemed to expedite everything. Whether it was his confident demeanor or the expensive suit, nurses and doctors responded immediately. Within minutes, Emma was being examined by a pediatrician, while Olivia hovered anxiously nearby, Daniel standing a respectful distance away. "She has an ear infection," the doctor explained after a thorough examination. "A pretty severe one, which is why her fever is so high. We'll start her on antibiotics right away." Relief made Olivia's knees weak. "So she'll be okay?" she asked, her voice tight with unshed tears. "Kids are resilient," the doctor assured her with a smile. "The fever should come down within 24 hours, and she'll start feeling better in a couple of days." While Emma received her first dose of medicine, Olivia stepped out into the waiting room, where Daniel sat, his tie loosened and jacket draped over the chair beside him. He stood when he saw her. Relief, profound and dizzying, had made Olivia's knees weak when the doctor assured her Emma would be okay. Now, stepping out into the hospital waiting room, that relief was quickly shadowed by a familiar anxiety. Daniel stood when he saw her, his tie loosened, jacket draped over the chair beside him. "She has an ear infection," Olivia told him, her voice still a little shaky. "They're giving her antibiotics now." "Thank God," Daniel said, and the genuine relief in his voice surprised her. "Do you need to stay overnight?" Olivia shook her head. "They said we can go home once the paperwork is finished and they've written prescriptions." The word, prescriptions, echoed in her mind, a stark reminder of the money she didn't have until Friday. Her worry must have shown, for Daniel stepped closer. "What is it?" "Nothing," she said automatically, the defense mechanism of someone used to handling problems alone, but something in his steady gaze broke through her reserve. "The prescriptions? I don't think I can cover them until I get paid." "I'll take care of it," Daniel said without hesitation. "You've already done too much." "I can't accept." "Olivia," he interrupted gently. "Let me help, please." There was something in his expression, a sadness, a determination that stopped her protests. Too exhausted to argue, she nodded wordlessly. 2 hours later, Daniel drove them back to Olivia's apartment. Emma, now sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, her fever already beginning to respond to the medication, stirred occasionally with soft snuffles. The car was quiet, a comfortable hum of the engine filling the space. "Thank you," Olivia said softly, looking at her daughter's tranquil face. "I don't know what I would have done today without your help." Daniel's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on the road. "I'm glad I was there." After a pause, he added, his voice carrying an intensity that made her look up. "I meant what I asked earlier, Olivia. Why didn't you tell anyone at Westridge what was happening? We had programs, resources that could have helped." Olivia looked down at Emma, tracing the soft curve of her cheek. "Shame is a powerful silencer," she said finally. "And James, he was very good at making me feel like everything was my fault. By the time I realized how isolated I'd become, it seemed too late." "It's never too late," Daniel said, his voice firm. As they stopped at a red light outside her rundown apartment building, he turned to face her fully. "My sister went through something similar. Abusive husband, cut off from family, nowhere to turn. The difference is she didn't make it out." The simple statement hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken grief. Olivia's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It was 7 years ago," Daniel said, as the light turned green and he eased the car forward. "She had a daughter too, my niece, Lily. She's 9 now and lives with my parents." Understanding dawned on Olivia, a profound sense of connection forming between them. "That's why you helped me today," she said, her voice soft. "Because I reminded you of Rebecca." A sad smile touched his lips. Initially, yes, you reminded me of Rebecca. But then, when I realized who you were, he shook his head slightly. A complex mix of regret and renewed purpose in his eyes. Do you know you were nominated for the Leadership Development Program right before you left? Daniel continued, his tone shifting to a more professional, yet still deeply personal register. The board had unanimously approved fast-tracking your career. Olivia's breath caught. She had worked so hard for that opportunity, never knowing she had actually achieved it. Another casualty of James's insidious control, another dream he had unknowingly stolen. The realization was a bitter pill. Life takes unexpected turns, she said softly, staring at the dimly lit, shabby exterior of her apartment building as Daniel pulled up to the curb. The contrast between her past potential and her current reality was stark, a testament to how quickly circumstances could unravel. Daniel's gaze remained on her for a moment, unreadable, before he opened his door. Daniel insisted on carrying the sleeping Emma while Olivia gathered the prescriptions and her purse. As they climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, Olivia was acutely aware of how shabby the building must look to someone like him. At her door, Mrs. Abernathy greeted them with concerned questions about Emma's condition. While Olivia put Emma to bed in the small room they shared, she could hear Daniel and Mrs. Abernathy talking quietly in the living room. When she returned, Daniel was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. He turned as she entered, and there was a new resolve in his expression. "Olivia, I have a proposition for you," he said. "Westridge is launching a new community outreach initiative. We need someone with marketing experience to head it up. The position comes with flexible hours and an on-site daycare facility." Olivia stared at him, speechless. Was he offering her a job after everything? "I don't want charity," she said finally, her pride still intact despite everything. "This isn't charity, Olivia," Daniel replied firmly, his voice cutting through her pride with a quiet intensity. "This is recognizing talent and offering an opportunity. You were one of our best. We lost you once because the system failed you. I don't want to make that mistake again." Before Olivia could respond, a restless whimper, then a full-blown cry erupted from Emma's bedroom. "I need to check on her," Olivia said, already turning, torn between the hope of Daniel's offer and a deep, ingrained suspicion. "There's something else you should know, Olivia," Daniel said quietly, stopping her mid-step. "Something about your husband, James. I think you should sit down for this." Olivia froze, her daughter's cries momentarily drowned out by the sudden, rushing blood in her ears. Something about James. After nearly a year of complete silence, the mere mention of his name was enough to make her heart race with anxiety. "Let me check on Emma first," she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt, before hurrying into the bedroom. In the small bedroom, Olivia found Emma standing in her crib, her cheeks still flushed, but her cries more irritated than pained. The medicine was working. Olivia changed her diaper, gave her a cool, sippy cup of water, and sang softly until Emma's eyelids grew heavy again, settling back into a peaceful sleep. Once the baby was settled, Olivia returned to the living room where Daniel waited. His tall frame made the small space seem even more cramped than usual. Mrs. Abernathy had tactfully excused herself, promising to check in tomorrow. Olivia sat on the edge of her worn couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap, bracing herself. "What about James?" she asked directly, preferring to face whatever it was head-on. Daniel sat in the chair across from her, his gaze steady. "When you told me his name in the car, it sounded familiar. I couldn't place it at first, but while you were with Emma at the hospital, I made some calls." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "James Barrett has applied for a position at Westridge Innovations, a senior marketing position, directly under my supervision." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "What?" Olivia whispered, her breath catching. "That's impossible. He moved to California after he left. At least that's what his sister told me when I tried to find him for child support." "He's back in Boston," Daniel confirmed, his voice devoid of judgment, simply stating a fact. "And he listed you as a reference on his application." Anger flashed through Olivia, hot and sudden. Me? After everything he did? She stood abruptly, pacing the small room, her mind reeling from the audacity. He abandoned his pregnant wife, emptied our joint savings account, and hasn't sent a single dollar for his daughter's care. Olivia seethed, her voice rising with each accusation. And he has the audacity to use my name? There's more, Daniel said quietly, his words cutting through her indignation. His resume claims he was a marketing director at Westridge for the last 3 years. Your position, essentially, but elevated. He paused, letting the implication sink in. He's fabricated an entire career history. Olivia sank back onto the couch, stunned, the fight draining from her. He always was a convincing liar. His interview is scheduled for next week, Daniel continued. With his qualifications, fake as they are, he would likely have gotten the job. The salary starts at $120,000. The figure hung in the air between them, a stark, bitter irony. More money than Olivia had ever made, even during her best years at Westridge. And all while she counted pennies for baby formula. "What are you going to do?" Olivia asked finally, her voice hollow. "That depends on you," Daniel replied, his expression unreadable. "Legally, I can't refuse to interview him based on his personal history, but falsifying employment records is grounds for immediate disqualification. You want me to expose him?" It wasn't a question, but a statement of dawning realization. "I want you to do whatever you feel is right," Daniel said. "But yes, if you were willing to provide a statement about his fraudulent claims, it would give us clear grounds to reject his application." Olivia stood again, moving to the window. The streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk below. Somewhere out there, James was living his life as if Emma didn't exist, as if the promises he'd made to Olivia had never been spoken. Olivia stood by the window, gazing at the distant city lights, her heart heavy with the weight of James's indifference and endless deceit. He had moved on, built a new life, while she scraped by, counting pennies for their daughter's survival. The injustice of it burned. "He doesn't deserve that job," she declared, turning back to Daniel, her voice firm, stripped of its earlier hesitation. "But more importantly, he doesn't deserve to get away with lying." Her eyes met Daniel's, a new resolve hardening their depths. "I'll write the statement." A wave of relief visibly washed over Daniel's face. "Thank you. I'll have my assistant pick it up tomorrow." The air in the small living room, usually thick with her anxieties, now hummed with a different kind of tension. Olivia, emboldened by her decision, looked at Daniel. "Why did you really come up here tonight, Daniel?" she asked, her gaze searching his. "You could have called to tell me about James. You could have sent an email about the job offer. Why are you really here?" Daniel's expression softened, a hint of vulnerability flickering in his steel-gray eyes. "Because 17 months ago, a bright, talented woman disappeared from my company," he began, his voice dropping to a quieter, more emotional tone. "And today I found her counting pennies for baby formula, because when I recognized you, I realized I had failed as a leader." He hesitated, then continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because you remind me that second chances are possible, and I need to believe that right now." Something in his admission, raw and unexpected, hinted at deeper waters, making Olivia's heart flutter with an unfamiliar sensation. She found herself wanting to know more about this man who had upended her day in the most unexpected ways. A small smile touched her lips. "Are you always this involved with your employees' lives?" she asked, the words softened by a touch of playful curiosity. Daniel returned her smile, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Only the exceptional ones," he replied. The moment stretched between them, comfortable and somehow familiar, until Emma's monitor crackled with the sound of restless whimpers, breaking the spell. "I should go," Daniel said, standing, the intimacy of the moment fading slightly as practicality returned. "You both need rest." At the door he hesitated, his gaze earnest. "About the job offer. It's genuine, Olivia. Take a few days to think about it, but know that the position is yours if you want it." Olivia's gratitude was profound, extending beyond words. "Thank you," she said, meaning it for everything. The help with Emma, the ride, the medicine, and now this unexpected opportunity. "I'll think about it." After Daniel left, Olivia checked on Emma one last time before collapsing onto her own bed, emotionally and physically drained. Sleep claimed her almost instantly, but her dreams were troubled. James's face morphing into shadowy figures, Daniel standing just out of reach, Emma crying for her from somewhere she couldn't find. She woke to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains and the insistent buzz of her phone. The screen displayed a number she didn't recognize. Hesitantly, she answered, "Olivia Mitchell." A woman's crisp, professional voice came through the line. "Yes, this is she. This is Sandra Way, Mr. Westridge's executive assistant. He asked me to check on you and Emma this morning. How is she feeling?" Surprised by the follow-up, Olivia glanced at the baby monitor. Emma was still sleeping peacefully. "She's better, I think. Still sleeping." "I'm glad to hear it," Sandra replied, her tone warming slightly. "Mr. Westridge has asked me to deliver some paperwork regarding the position he discussed with you, along with a statement about James Barrett. Would noon work for you?" "Yes, that's fine," Olivia said, wondering just how much Sandra knew about her situation. "Excellent. Oh, and one more thing. Mr. Westridge would like to know if you and Emma would join him for dinner this evening. He mentioned wanting to discuss the community outreach initiative in more detail." The invitation caught Olivia off guard. "Dinner with Emma?" He specifically mentioned including her. He suggested Carino's at 6:30. "They have private dining rooms if you're concerned about Emma's comfort," Sandra confirmed. Carino's was one of Boston's most upscale Italian restaurants, the kind of place Olivia hadn't been able to afford even before Emma came along. "I don't think I have anything appropriate to wear," she admitted. "Don't worry about that," Sandra said easily. "Business casual is fine. Mr. Westridge will be coming directly from meetings all day." The morning light, softer than the harsh fluorescent glow of the convenience store, streamed through Olivia's thin curtains. Emma, thank goodness, was herself again, her fever a distant memory. She babbled happily in her crib, reaching out with grabby hands for a well-loved, slightly tattered bunny. "Good morning, sunshine," Olivia cooed, lifting her daughter and pressing a kiss to her soft, warm cheek. "Feeling better today?" Emma's cheerful response was a stark contrast to yesterday's distress. The unexpected dinner invitation, however, still loomed. Olivia rummaged through her meager closet, assessing her limited wardrobe with a critical eye. The nicest thing she owned was a simple navy dress, worn to a friend's wedding 2 years ago. It would have to do. Precisely at noon, a crisp knock echoed through the apartment. Sandra Way was younger than Olivia had anticipated, perhaps in her early 30s, with a sleek bob and intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing as they subtly scanned the small living space. "Ms. Mitchell, a pleasure to meet you," Sandra said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I've brought the paperwork Mr. Westridge mentioned." As Olivia invited her in, Sandra lowered her voice slightly, a professional confidence in her tone. "I should mention, Ms. Mitchell, I've worked with Mr. Westridge for 7 years. In that time, he has never personally intervened in a hiring situation like this, nor has he ever asked me to deliver paperwork that could easily be emailed." Olivia wasn't sure how to respond to this revelation. "He mentioned his sister went through something similar to my situation," she offered hesitantly. Sandra's expression softened, a brief, almost imperceptible shift. "Yes, Rebecca. Her death changed him profoundly." Sandra placed a sleek, black folder onto the small dining table. "These are the details of the position he's offering, along with the statement regarding James Barrett for you to review and sign, if you agree with the content." Olivia's heart hammered a nervous rhythm as she scanned the documents. The job description alone was impressive: Senior Director of Community Engagement. But then her eyes landed on the salary figure. It was nearly triple what she'd been making at Westridge before she left. Her breath caught. "There must be some mistake," she whispered, pointing to the number. Sandra shook her head, her composure unwavering. "No mistake. That is the approved salary for this position." Olivia pressed. "It seems excessive for a role that's essentially community relations." A faint, knowing smile touched Sandra's lips. "The position reports directly to the CEO and requires extensive experience in marketing, project management, and community building. All skills you've demonstrated in your previous role. The salary is commensurate with the responsibility." Before Olivia could argue further, Emma began fussing in her playpen. Sandra's eyes moved to Emma, her expression unreadable. "She's beautiful," she commented as Olivia picked Emma up. "She has your smile." The observation was unexpected and touching. "Thank you," Olivia said softly. Sandra checked her watch. "I should be going. Mr. Westridge will meet you at Carino's at 6:30. The reservation is under his name." She paused at the door, her earlier professional ease replaced by a grave seriousness. "One more thing, Ms. Mitchell. The statement about James Barrett. There's something you should know before you sign it." A chill snaked down Olivia's spine at Sandra's tone. "What is it?" "James Barrett isn't just applying to Westridge. He's being actively recruited by several major companies in Boston, all using the same fraudulent resume. And," Sandra hesitated, her gaze steady, "he's engaged to be married to Catherine Montrose." The name hit Olivia like a physical blow. Catherine Montrose, daughter of Richard Montrose, one of Boston's wealthiest real estate developers and a major investor in Westridge Innovations. "I see," Olivia said, her voice barely audible over the sudden roaring in her ears. "Mr. Westridge felt you should have all the information before making your decision," Sandra said gently. "I'll see you this evening." As the door clicked shut behind Sandra, Olivia sank onto the couch, Emma squirming in her lap. The pieces were falling into place now, clicking together with a chilling precision. Daniel's unusual interest, the generous job offer, the dinner invitation. This wasn't just about her talent or his sister's memory. This was about power and money and connections. This was about something far larger than her personal struggles. Olivia had just become a pawn in a much bigger, more intricate game. Anger flared, hot and sudden, quickly followed by a burgeoning sense of agency. Carino's restaurant glowed with warm light against the darkening evening sky as Olivia approached, Emma secured in her carrier. She had spent the afternoon in a state of agitated contemplation, alternating between anger at James's continued deception and suspicion about Daniel's true motives. The revelation about Catherine Montrose had been particularly disturbing. Olivia had met Catherine once at a Westridge function, tall, poised, and unmistakably privileged. The idea that James had managed to ingratiate himself with the Montrose family spoke volumes about his ambition and charm, the same charm that had once swept Olivia off her feet. She paused outside the restaurant, smoothing down her navy dress with one nervous hand. Emma, thankfully, was in good spirits, her fever gone, and her usual cheerful demeanor restored. Olivia had dressed her in her nicest outfit, a pale yellow dress with tiny embroidered flowers, a gift from Mrs. Abernathy. "We can do this," she whispered to Emma, who responded with a happy gurgle. Taking a deep breath, Olivia pushed open the heavy wooden door. The maître d' greeted her with professional courtesy, not batting an eye at the baby carrier. "Mitchell, Mr. Westridge is waiting for you in the Tuscany room." He led them through the main dining area, past tables of well-dressed patrons enjoying fine wines and expensive meals. Olivia felt conspicuously out of place, acutely aware of her simple dress and sensible shoes. Emma, however, gazed around with wide-eyed fascination at the chandeliers and flickering candles. The Tuscany room was a small, private dining area, warmly lit and decorated with tasteful Italian landscapes. Daniel stood as they entered, coming forward immediately to greet them. "Olivia, thank you for coming," he said, his smile genuine. He peered at Emma in her carrier. "And how's our brave little patient tonight?" "Much better," Olivia replied, setting the carrier on a chair. The medicine worked wonders. Daniel had shed his formal business attire for dark slacks and a blue button-down shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. The more casual look suited him, softening his CEO persona into something more approachable. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to the elegantly set table. A high chair had been placed at one end, and Olivia noticed with surprise that a small stuffed bear sat waiting on it. "I hope Emma doesn't mind bears," Daniel said, following her gaze. "My niece Lily suggested it might make the high chair less intimidating." The thoughtfulness of the gesture momentarily disarmed Olivia's prepared defenses. She lifted Emma from her carrier and settled her in the high chair, where the baby immediately grabbed for the bear with delighted hands. Once they were seated, a waiter appeared with menus and a wine list. Daniel ordered a bottle of Pinot Noir, then turned to Olivia. "Everything here is excellent, but their risotto is particularly good." Olivia nodded, scanning the menu without really seeing it. She needed to address the elephant in the room before she could think about food. Sandra told me about Catherine Montrose, she said abruptly, setting down her menu. And about James being recruited by other companies. Daniel's expression remained steady. I thought you should know the full situation. What I don't understand is why you care so much. Olivia pressed. James lied on his resume. Yes, that's grounds for rejecting his application. But this dinner, the job offer, all of it seems excessive for simply avoiding a bad hire. Daniel took a moment before responding, his steel-gray eyes serious. You're right to question my motives, Olivia. The truth is, this situation has become more complicated than a simple case of resume fraud. He leaned forward slightly. Richard Montrose is not just an investor in Westridge. He's pushing to become the majority shareholder, which would effectively give him control of the company. And you don't want that to happen, Olivia guessed. No, I don't. Montrose views Westridge as nothing more than a financial asset. He would gut our research division, outsource most of our jobs overseas, and focus exclusively on short-term profits. The waiter returned with the wine, going through the ritual of presenting the bottle and pouring a small amount for Daniel to taste. Once he approved, and their glasses were filled, Daniel continued. When I discovered James Barrett was engaged to Catherine Montrose, certain things started making sense. James has been feeding information to Montrose, specifics about our operations, our vulnerabilities, our plans for expansion. Olivia stared at him in disbelief. How do you know this? Because the information being used against us in negotiations could only have come from someone with insider knowledge of our marketing strategy, knowledge that very few people outside the company would have. Like a former marketing manager, Olivia said quietly, the implications dawning on her. Daniel nodded. Exactly. James has been using the information you shared with him during your marriage to position himself with Montrose and to undermine Westridge. The betrayal cut deep. Even after everything James had already done, Olivia had loved her job at Westridge, had been proud of the work she'd done there. The idea that James had exploited that for his own gain made her stomach turn. So, you want me to sign that statement to discredit James and weaken Montrose's position? She concluded, a bitter edge to her voice. Yes, Daniel admitted honestly. But that's not the only reason I offered you the job. Isn't it? The community outreach position seemed conveniently created just when he needed to counter Montrose's influence. Emma chose that moment to drop her bear, letting out a frustrated cry. Olivia automatically reached down to retrieve it, but Daniel was quicker, picking it up and gently handing it back to the baby with a smile that Emma immediately returned. Daniel, sensing her continued skepticism, gently set down his fork. The community outreach initiative has been in development for months, he said, his voice earnest. I was planning to launch it next quarter, but recent events accelerated the timeline. I won't pretend there isn't a strategic advantage to highlighting Westridge's community commitment right now, but the position is real, Olivia, and you are genuinely the most qualified person I know to lead it. Olivia studied his face, searching for any flicker of deception, but found only open intensity. She thought of James's empty apartment, the drained bank accounts, the relentless struggle to make ends meet. She thought of Emma, sleeping peacefully beside her, oblivious to the man who denied her existence while leveraging stolen information for personal gain. He doesn't get the job at Westridge, she said, her voice firm. His fraud becomes known to other potential employers. And Richard Montrose discovers that his future son-in-law has been less than honest about his professional credentials. It would destroy him. Daniel nodded without apology. Yes, he agreed. It would. I'll sign it, Olivia declared, her decision crystallizing. Not for you or for Westridge, but because it's the truth. And because Emma deserves better than a father who pretends she doesn't exist. Relief washed over Daniel's features. Thank you. As they shared a tiramisu, Emma beginning to doze in her high chair, Daniel brought the conversation back to business. There's one more thing you should know, Olivia, about the community outreach position. She tensed slightly. What is it? The initiative will be announced at the Westridge Foundation Gala next weekend. As the new director, you would be expected to attend. The gala? Olivia echoed, the annual event a distant, glittering memory from her past life. I don't think I'm ready for that kind of public appearance. You underestimate yourself, Daniel said gently. But there's another reason I want you there. Richard and Catherine Montrose will be attending. So will James. Understanding dawned, cold and sharp. You want to confront him publicly. I want him to face the consequences of his actions, Daniel corrected. And yes, having you there, successful, composed, leading our most significant new initiative, would send a powerful message. It was manipulative, Olivia realized, but also undeniably satisfying to contemplate. I don't have anything to wear to a gala, she said, the practical concern emerging first. Daniel smiled. Sandra can help with that. She has remarkable taste and connections with several boutiques. As they left the restaurant, Daniel insisted on driving them home. The night air was crisp with approaching winter, and Emma was sound asleep in her carrier. In the warm interior of his car, Olivia found herself studying Daniel's profile as he drove, wondering how much of her initial judgment had been unfair. Why did you really ask me that question yesterday? She said suddenly, her voice soft. Why didn't you ever tell me? It seems so personal, not like a CEO addressing a former employee. Daniel was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the road. Because I meant it personally, he finally said. Olivia, I noticed you from your first day at Westridge. Your intelligence, your creativity, your genuine passion for your work. They stood out immediately. Olivia stared at him, stunned. I barely spoke to you back then. We had several conversations at company events. You probably don't remember. Why would you? I was just another executive to you, but I remember every one of them. He glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. I wanted to ask you to dinner a dozen times, but it never seemed appropriate given our positions in the company, and then suddenly you were engaged, and then gone. I know that rationally, Daniel acknowledged, his voice a soft murmur in the quiet car. But seeing you again, it felt like a second chance I didn't deserve. Emma stirred in her carrier, a sleepy murmur breaking the intimate moment between them. Daniel helped carry her upstairs, the sleeping baby nestled against his chest while Olivia unlocked the door. In the dim light of her apartment, as Daniel gently transferred Emma to her crib, Olivia made her decision. She would take the job. She would attend the gala. She would face James and the Montroses with her head held high, not for revenge, but for justice for herself and for Emma. I'll be at the gala, she told Daniel as they stood in her small living room, her voice steady and sure, and I'll make sure the community outreach initiative is everything you envisioned. His smile was warm, relieved, and something more, something that sent a flutter of unexpected anticipation through her chest. 1 week, he said, his eyes holding hers. A lot can change in a week. Indeed, it could, Olivia thought, as she closed the door behind him. In just 24 hours, her world had already shifted on its axis. The night of the gala arrived with breathtaking speed. The week had been a whirlwind of preparations, signing employment contracts, meeting with Sandra to select an appropriate gown, a stunning emerald silk that made Olivia feel like a different person entirely, and arranging for Mrs. Abernathy to watch Emma for the evening. As Daniel escorted her into the grand ballroom of the Westridge Foundation Gala, Olivia felt a curious sense of homecoming, mingled with transformation. These were familiar faces in a familiar setting, but she was no longer the person she had been when she worked here before. Conversations paused as they entered, curious eyes taking in Daniel's hand at the small of her back, the confident set of her shoulders beneath the emerald silk. Sandra had done wonders with her hair and makeup, but Olivia knew the real change was deeper, in the steel that adversity had forged within her. Ready? Daniel murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Before she could answer, she saw them across the room. Richard Montrose, impressive in his tuxedo. Catherine, elegant in champagne-colored satin, and between them, looking polished and self-assured, James Barrett. Her ex-husband's eyes met hers across the crowded room, confusion giving way to shock as recognition dawned. Olivia held his gaze steadily, allowing herself one small, knowing smile before turning away. More than ready, she told Daniel, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Let's make this night unforgettable." And as Daniel led her forward to introduce her as Westridge's newest executive, Olivia realized that the coins she'd counted just 1 week ago had led her not to poverty, but to possibility. Sometimes, she thought, the universe worked in mysterious ways, bringing help from unexpected quarters and second chances when they were needed most. Behind her, James Barrett watched in growing dismay as his carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Ahead of her, a future stretched bright with promise, not just for herself, but for Emma. And beside her stood Daniel, whose compassion had sparked a chain of events that would change everything. One moment of kindness in a convenience store had led them here. One question: why didn't you ever tell me? The store had opened a door she thought forever closed. Olivia raised her glass in a silent toast to new beginnings, to second chances, and to the infinite possibilities that awaited beyond the coins she'd once counted with trembling hands.